All right. Hello, everyone. Just give it a minute for folks to start trickling in. We're so excited for this panel today. I'm so pumped. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Me too.
it's gonna be fun.
All right. Well, we'll just dive right into it because I feel like we have so many things that we want to squeeze into today's session. We have a lot to say about indie animation and how we think it especially can be a solution during these trying times, given the industry and given that the theme of our entire BRIC Summit this year is perseverance. I think all of these folks here that we have as guests are shining examples of that. So today we're going to learn all about how indie animation differs from traditional studio animation, the joys and the challenges that come along with indie projects, and how each of these fine individuals have forged their own paths. For those of you joining, hi, my name is Sarah. I am your moderator for today. I'm also BRIC's Director of Communications, and I'm so happy to introduce you all to our fabulous slate of guests today. We have Chris here, who we're starting out with. Chris is a CG artist and animator who likes to make floppy characters. He loves all things 3D, slightly ugly, grotesquely detailed, but still charming. He's a specialist in Houdini and is always interested in exploring new techniques, tools, and helping others learn 3D and animation and collaborating, in addition to creating his own films that have screened at Sundance, Annecy, Ottawa, Pictoplasma, and others. He co-runs the creative production studio Grin Machine, where he creates work for TV, advertising, music videos. So lots of stuff going on with Chris's background. Next, we have Leslie here. Leslie, if you could wave. Leslie here is the amazing founder of Legends Animated, which is a nonprofit animation company that provides collaborative opportunities to create engaging and, most importantly, impactful independent animation. Leslie is also the director of operations at Ezeh Hollywood, which, for those of you who may not be familiar, is behind the Annie Awards. So that's huge. Leslie enjoys supporting the animation community through both organizations, as well as participating as a judge at animation festivals and events such as the LA Animation Festival, View Conference, and Kaboom Animation Festival. Next here we have Maddie. Maddie, if you could wave to all. Maddie loves making weird movies for the weirdos out there of the world. I can totally relate. She's a freelance director, animator, illustrator, and writer based out of LA. She's passionate about creating funny, surreal worlds, and her strange and character-centric storytelling aims to highlight the comedy inherent in being alive. She's worked with clients such as Bento Box, Adult Swim, Vice, Blink Inc., Grin Machine with Chris over here, Hagen Blake, Nickelodeon, and much more. And then last but not least, we have Pearl over here, who is a director, story artist, writer, and the founder of Orange Blossom Studios, which recently exceeded their Kickstarter goals for Wheels and Roses. So kudos and claps, snaps for that. They primarily work in animation for TV and feature film and has worked on Hair Love, Craig of the Creek, #1 Happy Family USA, and Canvas. So many great shows. Creating community through storytelling is at the heart of what Pearl does. So that is what we are here to talk about today. All right. So I would love, I mean, I've kind of introduced you all, but I would love to hear from each one of you how you exactly got into indie animation. How did you find yourselves in these roles? And Chris, I'd love to start with you.
Sure, yeah. Thanks for the great intro, by the way. Yeah, I'll say I think for me it's interesting. I kind of originally came into doing animation from like I first got inspired when I was seeing people just doing like flash animation stuff back when I was a teenager online, and that kind of really opened it up to a thing where like, oh, animation isn't just like this unattainable thing made only by big studios. Like it can be done by individuals who are like, like close to the same age as me even. Like there's a lot of
Right.
like 15-year-olds making, flash animations on like weird websites like newgrounds.com back in the day or whatever. And so that was the thing that kind of made me realize, oh, this is like a possible thing. But then, I was like going to school and I kind of thought, oh, I love doing animation. I guess like someday I'll get like a job at Pixar or something would be like my dream. And then I eventually, like, going to school was exposed to a lot of other really cool, like, indie animation stuff. And it wasn't until I went to animation festivals that it really kind of opened my mind and, like, made me realize, like, oh, this could be kind of my goal of, like, I want to make my own stuff and, like, get into festivals and do things like that.
It's a
Um,
whole new world, huh?
exactly, yeah. So that was like really important and inspiring for me. And so I did that, and like I tried to get in with my thesis film in college, to some festivals and stuff, and I didn't get into any festivals, but I did end up getting like a Vimeo staff pick at the time, which was very motivating and made me want to like keep doing that stuff. And I had fun continuing to go to festivals, made lots of friends, just got really involved in the community, and that was all awesome. And I also, like, for work and in terms of like, supporting myself and making money, like I got into freelancing, and I realized that that was a really good path for me because I really enjoyed having the balance of being able to say yes or no to jobs and like make enough money to survive, and then know, okay, I can spend a little bit of time working on my own projects just for myself, and then go back to freelancing on ads or whatever. So I'm a big advocate in general for freelance and have kind of always been doing that. Even now running the studio, it's kind of just like me and a couple friends freelancing together on projects and being more legit as like a studio. But
Great.
yeah, that's kind of, I don't know how I got into all that stuff and my extra backstory.
Well, that's amazing. All right. Maddie, could you go next about how you found yourself in the world of indie animation?
Totally, yeah, yeah. I'm similar to Chris. I was always super into animation on the internet when I was a kid. I feel like that's pretty common for people our age to be into all the Newground stuff. And then I ended up going to RISD for animation, which was super great. Loved RISD. It's like a very yeah, it's a program that really like pushes you to find like your individual voice like as a creator, and it's like very like individual, very weird, pushes you to be very weird, which is great for me. And then luckily for me, my thesis film that I made when I was a senior had a really great festival run. I got to go all over the world. I got to go to like Japan on this festival run. It was really crazy, and I ended up meeting like a
Amazing.
ton of, yeah, it was crazy. um I did not expect that when I was submitting. But yeah, I got super lucky, and I ended up meeting like a ton of people in the indie animation space on my first run. And animation is just such like an amazing community. It's so easy to make friends with people, even like right when you're like right out of school. Like everyone is so supportive. And with my thesis film, Adult Swim actually reached out to me like right when I was graduating, and they were like, "Hey, you should make a short for Off the Air. You should make shorts for us." And basically from then, I've sort of been juggling making my own independent shorts, making shorts that have been funded by Adult Swim, funded by Bento Box, and like jumping on and off ad projects, jumping on and off writing gigs, jumping on and off like pipeline animation jobs. I also started out in New York and ended up moving to LA. And something that I definitely want to touch on is like the importance of like the union here, and like how it was like night and day doing TV in New York versus LA, and like how important all of like the union protections are out here for, the hours that you're working, how much you're expected to be doing, how much you're getting paid in like a really big way. So yeah, I live in LA now, and when I moved out here, I started working with a manager, and since then, I have been really lucky to start developing a bunch of projects, starting to pitch for TV and feature and all of that stuff. And so now a big part of my life is trying to figure out like balancing my independent work and still putting out shorts on the internet, making like small budget shorts for places like Adult Swim, and then also developing TV stuff with the places that I'm developing stuff with right now.
So great. Such a variety of work. All right. Pearl, could you go next about your journey into the world of indie animation?
Yeah, I feel like my journey it's still happening, and it's very much a journey that I've been slowly radicalized and pushed towards. I feel like when I first started off in the animation industry, I'm from Vancouver, Canada. And on our previous call, I think I mentioned that my college teachers were like, oh, we're going to be training you on how to be like drawing slaves, basically. You are going to slot inside of this system and draw for shows in the style of that show and for someone else's vision. And that was totally fine for me. Like when I graduated, I was like, listen, I just want a job. I want to learn as much as I can learn. But then I started feeling not really seen in the media that I was creating for other people. And I was kind of like trying to find a way to have an outlet for the things that I wanted to talk about. And so that started off with me actually doing a Kickstarter, but for a personal comic called Tension. It was about my personal curly hair journey. And that was something that I was like, oh, this actually feels really good. Like to be able to just talk about something that's really personal and specific to my lived experience. And from there, I actually got in contact with the team for Hair Love, which was also another Kickstarter and is a short film. Ended up getting picked up by Sony and it went further. But at the time when it was just at the beginning, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I really want to work on this. This is really like independently made right now. Like they're just like out here being like, hey, you want to work together? Like you like doing stuff about this topic. We love your artwork. Would you like to come on board? And so that kind of further opened the door of me being like, oh, okay, like this is really cool. Same thing with Canvas. Canvas was also another Kickstarter short film project. And I think just me slowly kind of opening the avenue of like being able to work on specific stories outside of the animation studio system kind of helped me think about what I want to do for myself personally. And in like 2019, I had an idea that is now Wheels and Roses. And I finally, because yay, fun employment in 2023, because I had so much time, I was like, you know what? I might as well just try to do something independently because for personal satisfaction, but literally because of survival as well. I was like, I got to make something work. Let me try to do something independent. And that's what I did. And the Kickstarter was successful. And I'm really grateful for that. But it took a lot of like radicalizing like events in my life to push because like the major studio system can be comfortable, right? Until it's not. And so that's when I was like, all right, let me try my own thing.
Right. And actually, speaking of Wheels and Roses, Leslie at Legends is also very much has been involved with that. So, Leslie, if you could tell us about maybe how Legends was founded as well to back these independent projects and how you got your start there.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we're very much appreciative of supporting Pearl and their Orange Blossom team. It's been an amazing journey just working with them and supporting them in reaching their goals. So I guess to explain how Legends Animated came to fruition, we'll go back to how I even came into the industry. My journey is a bit unconventional. I studied English and theater in college with the aim of being a voice artist, maybe doing some stage and film as well. So my way of networking at the time was to volunteer at as many festivals as could have me, as well as independent productions, both live action and animation. And in the process, I really fell in love with the animation production process. I always loved cartoons since like my earliest memory of watching TV, but it's just that experience that made me really have a deeper love for animation and just the love that goes into it, the labor of love, really. So I kept looking for opportunities to learn on the job, basically, by volunteering for these productions. Um, and a quick side note, I actually, when I was volunteering, so I have a special spot for the Los Angeles Animation Festival because I was volunteering for them at the time, and that's how I learned about Asifa Hollywood. Asifa Hollywood had a table there, and so I found out about them, and I started volunteering for Asifa Hollywood. And then, and then after like maybe a year or so volunteering, they hired me once the job was opened. And fast forward 6 years, I'm now their director of operations. So
Amazing.
I just want to say volunteering it's such a great way. If you're stuck trying to get like internships and you can't, it's way too competitive, try volunteering at these festivals, local festivals. They really need support. And usually when you offer them their capacity support, they're more than willing to show you, like introduce you to people, show you the ropes. Same as independent productions. Now that's to say, also keeping in mind not to get exploited, of course. If you find as you volunteer, it's a meaningful learning process for you. I personally found it to be very valuable, and a lot of that got me here where I am right now. But to complete the circle of my journey, so over the years of me just volunteering and supporting these productions, I kept hearing this recurring concern from creators in the animation world where they're like, I wish I could, make this passion project film I've been dying to do, but it's just overwhelming to go from start to finish with it. And while managing my, whatever main job at a studio, it basically just needing capacity support for that. So after I got to a certain point, I was like, I could do that. I don't have any artistic skills at all, but what I can do is help them with the business stuff. So they then can just focus on the creative part. And so that's where Legends Animated was created. That was the genesis of it. So myself and some like-minded friends who are creative and are currently board members of Legends Animated, we formed Legends in 2013. Originally, it was more of like a nonprofit animation like a collective, where we kind of did more guerrilla style, like shoestring budget animation, which was really fun and a great learning experience. But I did learn that it wasn't quite scalable and yeah, and not financially sustainable. So, but still great learning experience. But I had to, rethink, reimagine what's the better way to do that. So, took some time. I had to build more skills. And then come 2022, we relaunched it as more of a nonprofit resource hub for indie animation creators, where we offer services to folks like Pearl to get their projects, financed and made.
What a great evolution of an organization, especially as independent animation just as its own thing just grows and grows. So incredible what you're doing with Legends Animated, Leslie. Actually, that goes on to my next point that I wanted to go over, that topic of, with independent animation, there are no built-in teams. It's kind of like build your own team, build your own budgets from scratch, from ground zero. So I'm wondering in terms of how, independent animation really differs from, the traditional major studio pipeline. What has been your experience with that? Like, what are the major differences there? And could you explain more about, what it's like to build your own team and your own budgets from scratch?
Totally. I can jump in first really quick. I think for me, it was interesting, first graduating, my first jobs were making shorts independently and making music videos independently, especially because when I graduated, like less than a year later, the pandemic hit. And so all of a sudden, everyone needed animated music videos. They wanted to do animated ads. And so there were a lot of opportunities right at that moment for young directors. But generally speaking, like being a very, very young director who's like right out of school, it's very difficult to get work. No one trusts you. They're like, why should I trust you to direct on this project? Like versus someone with like years of experience, which like, I'm not even going to argue with that. Like that's like a valid concern. And so I ended up taking all of these really low budget music video directing gigs and micro budget like shorts from like Adult Swim, all of these incubator programs like the MTV Comedy Central Shorts program, of course, Adult Swim Smalls, Bento Box A Studio. There's like a million of them now. I think Cartoon is doing it too. And it's like when you are young, you can accept smaller budgets to be able to just sort of like make whatever you want. The caveat being you're making the entire thing yourself.
Right.
Or you are finding someone to do sound, or you are finding someone to do music for you. For me, my brother luckily is a super talented musician, so I can just make him do whatever I want for free by bullying him. Just kidding, I pay him. But when I got into pipeline animation, I was like, oh my gosh, like Wow, so crazy. My first productions. And at first I was excited and it was fun. I mean, working with other people is always fun. Everyone in animation is super chill. Working in like studio productions, like it just like feels like being at summer camp sometimes. Like everyone's like so chill. Everyone, people are wearing flip-flops in the office, just like summer camp. Anyway, I think after a while though, I really just started feeling that itch. I was like, this is like not like really working for me. Maybe I have like a little bit of like reticence to be sort of like not the one who's in charge, but I was like, I learned a lot in terms of like efficiency from pipeline. I learned a lot about budgeting time more so than money, really. And I was able to take that and sort of like apply that to my own practice. And even where I am now, it's like the budgets have gotten bigger as I've gotten older, but I'm still doing pretty much 100% of the animation myself. And so I think you can kind of say that for the majority of people in indie animation. You're kind of like doing it mostly yourself, or you're doing it with like a couple of friends, you know. But in a way, sometimes I feel like when I do something myself or with like a couple of other people, it gets done more quickly because you're not disseminating information to as many people. And yeah, I think I definitely like want to sing the praises of indie, but I don't want to like demonize pipeline animation either. And I think that, you know, especially if you're a young director, like I'm seeing some comments popping up being like, I'm a really young director, I want people to take a chance on me. Like having that industry experience can be valuable for people to be like, oh, you know, this person's pitching for a show, but they've worked in pipeline before. They are someone who is going to be like amenable to like working on a team. They understand like the value of that and like how important communication is, but they also have that sort of like indie spirit. You know, the most interesting ideas are always going to come from the independent world. That's just,
Yeah, I think we can all agree on that.
yeah.
And speaking of, I think Pearl, you can speak to Maddie's experience too in terms of having that traditional experience, but now evolving into the independent space, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think what Maddie is saying is super on point because having information from both spaces, from both experiences of being within a pipeline system at a major studio and being able to like just kind of freestyle that for your own specific project is really important. For me, for example, for Wheels and Roses, I don't think I would have been able to construct the project how it was with the timeline that it went through and the types of people that I brought on board without having gone through my traditional like studio system, because I had to learn like how long things take and what kind of departments need what kind of support and what kind of budget works for this kind of project, to making sure that you don't like underpay people, that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't have learned that if I didn't talk to people or learn from other people's professions and departments and get that kind of information. Um, yeah, so I will totally agree with like Maddie that like having both is really great and not to demonize like the major studio system. I think like what is like the frustrating part is the blockage of cool ideas. I think that's like what's, you know, the biggest obstacle because it's not really like a major studio's the problem. It's like the obstacles they put in place for
Right.
things not to get made, right? Because that system serves a purpose for people to learn so much, especially like before COVID, being in person was really cool because I could be like next to an art director and peek over their desk and be like, what are you doing? Can you tell me what you're drawing? Like, how are you doing this? What's your thought process? And even when I was doing my Kickstarter for Wheels and Roses, like I had a bunch of different people to help me fill in the gaps of my personal knowledge because I know there are some indie creators who can literally do everything. They can animate, they can composite, they can do music, they can do everything. I am not that kind of artist. I need help. And so being able to hire people with different sets of expertise and being able to learn from them is something that I don't think I would have gotten so intimately if I was in the major studio system as well. Like, for example, I was working with a composer, Paul Fraser, love him, hire him, he's great. And it was really interesting for me as a first-time indie director where I was like, I don't even know how to ask questions about like music. Like, how do I form questions about something that I have no experience with? And him being able to just like in a real chill way, like explain about like certain things that he has experienced in the major studio pipeline as well was really helpful and taking our indie project into a really positive direction.
Amazing. Just to
Uh,
cycle back a little bit, I know the having both of that like traditional or having that traditional animation studio background has helped, I think, both you, Pearl, and Maddie. But on the other hand, we also have Chris, who hasn't had that experience, and I want to make sure that
Yeah.
that it's not necessary.
Yeah, I mean it's very interesting, and I do think, I mean I won't say I haven't totally had that experience, because I've always been a freelancer, but there are points where I've done like a multi-month long contract at a studio. Like Frame Store was a place that I worked for a while in New York on like ads and stuff. And I think it's really interesting talking about all this stuff, talking about like, or just, I'm just thinking about like how I kind of first got started freelancing. Like I remember the time where I was still like, on summer break from school, trying to find random freelance gigs, refreshing Craigslist every day and the jobs, trying to find if there was like anything that I could do for anyone. And like, there were times where there's one time where I remember I picked a job that was like making an ad for like a vineyard or something, that was like making wine, and they had like it was like only like a $3,000 budget or something. And I was like, cool, I can like split this up among me and my friends, and we can like make this ad together and blah blah blah. And it's just like, it's so crazy to look back at that now that I'm like doing that in a much more legit way. But it has been really valuable, the experience that I've gotten from those bigger studios. And I'll say my experience going into those bigger studios it was very jarring, realizing like, in a way, kind of like how much less efficient it is once you scale up and have this bigger studio, how hard the communication is. And like you get that job at a studio for the first time, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna like impress everybody, I'm gonna work really hard, I'm gonna stay late, I'm gonna do whatever I have to do to like keep this job. And I was there, and I remember they were like hardly assigning me any tasks, and I was like, why are they not giving me more work to do? Like, I'm not doing anything. And I felt so anxious. It was like really debilitating and scary. And everybody has imposter syndrome in the beginning, especially. Like, that doesn't ever really fully go away, but like, in the beginning, it's really bad. And it actually puts you in a situation, I think, where even if studios aren't necessarily trying to sort of like abuse like the workers are kind of sometimes putting themselves in situations where they're like kind of letting themselves overwork themselves and stay late. And if they don't have people at those studios that like let them know, like, hey, make sure you like go home on time and blah blah blah, whatever, it can get pretty bad. Anyway, I think it was a big important realization to me to realize, like, I'm not the only one here that is not getting an insane amount of work done every day. Like, everybody's kind of going at their own pace. And it's also okay if one day you get a ton of work done and the next day you get way less work done, and they're still paying you the same rate every day. It's like, it just is going to even out over time. And like, they're paying you to be there, like whether they're giving you work to do or not. And like, you need to value your time and go home, at a reasonable time, and like really try to not like put yourself in a situation where you are staying late, and then that's putting pressure on other people to stay late and like all this other stuff. Anyway, but that said, it did also all make me realize, like, I do really like working on smaller projects, where even just projects where it's just me. And I think that like you get so much efficiency when you're working on something of that scale, where you have the whole project that you can envision in your head, and you can execute it without having to communicate as much to other people about stuff. Um, or you can hand off like discrete little tasks where you're like, oh, I know my friend made this really cool short in this style, and I want this part of this ad to look like that. And I'll hire them and be like, you just do your thing, and I can trust you, and I know that you're gonna like kill it. And it can be like really efficient. And I feel like it's really tricky with animation to sometimes communicate, especially those more abstract or complex ideas, like the stuff that we're doing. It's like the most kind of experimental medium out there in a way, so it really benefits from doing, these smaller kind of indie projects, where it's easier to experiment than when you scale up and it becomes a lot harder to disseminate that sort of creative vision to everybody. So yeah, I don't know, that was my kind of brain dump of a bunch of stuff.
No, that was good. And I mean, whether it's, a small team or a team at all, if it's just a team of yourself, right? I do feel like it's easier to be able to actually tell the story that you want to tell, that's really personal,
100%.
authentic to you, right? And I feel like that kind of like free range storytelling is your power with indie animation, right?
100%.
I'm wondering, is there, I know Pearl, like Wheels and Roses is most recent in my mind and a very personal project for you. If you could talk a little bit about, what that meant to you, and how important that kind of authentic storytelling is, especially to an independent animator.
Oh my God. I don't know why my eyes just started watering low key because it's such an emotional, like, I
This
don't
is
know.
a
It's,
professional thing, yeah.
yeah, like it's a
It's
really
very close
emotional
to
thing.
everyone's hearts.
And like the people who like helped bring it together and come to life, like really just like so much gratitude for them too. And I think for me as a queer Black artist, it's just like it's really difficult seeing so many original shows being canceled before sometimes they even air, and a lot of queer content also being cut too. And you know, I'm new to this country in America, but there are so many things that are against the existence of queer people and also against artists. And so when those two identities intersect, it just feels like there's no room for any kind of stories to exist within that realm. And so me creating Wheels and Roses was just really like my attempt to just kind of like put out positivity and like show Black and brown kiddos that they can have like fun in the series, be badass and magical girls on skates, like and just have fun. And yeah, it's something that like is also really self-indulgent because I just feel like I really want to see that for myself on screen. And so that's what I'm gonna make. And it was cool to have support along the way. But yeah, it's definitely like one of the things about telling your own stories is you really have to ask yourself a lot of questions about like why you want to tell the story, why you're the person to tell this specific story, and like what kind of impact you also want it to have. For me anyway. Um, but yeah, it's definitely been an emotional journey. And I've been really grateful that community has come together to support the project so far.
Yeah. And speaking of community coming together to support that project, so much of this conversation is also about how do these projects get funded? And Leslie, I'm wondering if you could shed a little bit more light about that aspect of it. I know we have some folks in the Q&A who have asked, like, how do you manage a successful Kickstarter? Like, what is the process of even doing something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, majority of the work is I gotta give pretty much all the credit to Pearl and Orange Blossom Studios for just being, amazing storytellers. So, if you just have a powerful story, people are going to resonate with that. And it's just a matter of getting it seen to the audience. So with Legends, so what we did with Orange Blossom Studios and basically anyone that wants to work with us, since we're a 501c3 organization, we offer what is called fiscal sponsorships, which basically means we lend our nonprofit status to projects that are aligned with our mission. And our mission is to, provide to produce animation, independent animation. So more or less, if that's your goal, then you're aligned. We do prioritize stories from underrepresented communities by underrepresented creators, but we're not exclusive to that. And so if you become a fiscal sponsee, we basically, through being under our 501c3 status, there's basically more pathways for access for more funding, like grants. The donations that are given to your project are tax deductible for your donors. So that's an incentive for them. They can maybe to contribute or even contribute more because they know they can write it off their taxes. Same with businesses. They could would like to maybe sponsor your film or your production to be a sponsor and know that they can write that off for their business. So that's one way we support. There's also, what a great surprise we found is there's quite a bit of interest in the academic and nonprofit in general, those worlds, to fund animation that gives more visibility to social issues and just their mission statements in general. Like, you see a lot of more animated PSAs, more animated docuseries. So there is funding to be had there, and Legends can provide that pathway to those potential financial partnerships. I mean, you can, as an individual indie creator. You can seek those out yourself, of course, but the 501c3 status kind of helps with those making those connections and kind of facilitates that partnership, that co-production and so forth, or commission work. With our fiscal sponsors as well, we provide because of our 501c3 status, we receive free and sometimes discounted resources. For example, with Wheels and Roses, we used Google provides a Google Ads grant where we receive up to $10,000 of free ads per month. So we definitely use that to lift
That's
up.
major.
Yeah, it's very generous of Google. And yeah, so if you're a nonprofit, you can receive this grant. So we use that to kind of lift up Wheels and Roses for, the global community to be aware of the Kickstarter. For another production, the production team wanted to use Monday for their production management service. And Monday provides free licenses to nonprofits. So we were able to secure that for them for free. So basically we provide pathways, financial pathways, and services that makes production more cost effective for people we work with.
That's a great kind of partnership to have. And I know in addition to like the nonprofit partnership, there's also in terms of like grants and things, we talked about those social justice, political advocacy grants. There's also opportunities within your own schools as well. I know, Maddie, you have had some experience in that realm with RISD, right?
Yeah, I feel like, well, with RISD, the great thing about the program there is that they really encourage you to submit to festivals, and they bring in a lot of visiting artists that are very like well versed within like the festival scene. And they like will give you like a list of like grants that you can apply for. I mean, for animation, no one really got any grant money while we were still in school. I think that more so went to like the live action kids who like needed a lot of money to like hire actors, get all this equipment, yada yada yada. We were kind of paying to make animation at that time. But yeah, I think it is definitely possible to find grants. There are a lot of like social justice grants, like you said, and like a lot of like film festivals will have like grants that they give people. A lot of film festivals, especially the bigger ones, have institutes that you can join that are essentially like a grant, like Sundance Institute, which is great. And there are like a lot of different ways, like not to like mention as well, it's not technically a grant, but a lot of these shorts incubators, they're giving you like a similar amount of money that you would get in like an animation grant, just to make a short for them. And a lot of the time they don't like force you to give over the rights to the IP, depending on like how you negotiate the contract in the beginning. And then one thing I will say is that Europe, they have so much grant money. Canada has great grant money as well. Where's the USA grant money? Come on, guys, put our tax dollars to work. But like, yeah, I remember the first time I went to a festival abroad, I was talking to this French guy, and he was like, what's your next film gonna be? And I had just graduated from college, and I was like, I don't know, girl. Like, I guess I'll figure it out. And he was like, well, you have to have a pitch for your next short so you can get grant money. And I was like, I don't know that I will get grant money, Jean-Luc. And he was like, what do you mean? Essentially, grant is just standing in line. Eventually, it will come to you, the grant money. And I was like, dude, this is crazy. Like, this is how you think about it. And that is how a lot of people in Europe can think about it. And it's really awesome. When I was at RISD, this awesome guy, Eric from Cyclique, came through, and he was talking to us about his residency. And I was just shocked. We have a ton of European friends from like film festivals and stuff, and I do think that there is sort of like this trade-off, because in Europe there is grant money, you can go to college for free, which is awesome, all of that stuff. You can get like there's like a lot of like, there's like a whole indie like industry out there with like Mew and like all of these like places that do like crazy distribution stuff. The trade-off is you can kind of make more money doing commercial animation in the US, and so you kind of just have more cash to just like blow if you just want to be like, I'm gonna make a short this month. or whatever. So yeah, but a lot of my friends have done the cyclic residency and they are not French. You do not have to be French to do those French residencies. So yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind and to think about. And that, like, you know, I know at Annecy they have MIFA shorts, where you can pitch to get money and to get picked up by like a indie film distributor. That's how you end up on that Oscars shortlist. That's what I'll say. So if that's the world that you're interested in, like, Europe is your best friend. But yeah, it's like it's a whole nother crazy world. The Animation Institute also in Denmark, great residency. Chris knows about that.
Animation workshop. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
They're great. They're really worth looking into though. A lot of our friends have done residencies there. And yeah, it's a cool little place in Viborg. Yeah.
Amazing. I know something we also talked about lightly during our prep call was also forming cooperatives. Is that, Leslie, something you could talk a little bit more about?
Yeah, sure. So if you're like recently a graduated animation student looking for work, or if you're, you know, for folks who are just tired of being laid off from major studios for the X amount of time, I highly recommend considering an animation worker cooperative. Just creating that with, you know, your colleagues that you've worked with in the past that you get along with well. Just come together and create stories that you want to tell. I think that's the recurring theme here. And one, just to circle back to the benefits of indie animation, you get to own your IP. I think that was mentioned before, but just to really lift that up, like that is huge. Yesterday during Industry Day, that was brought up during the fireside chat, and that is like the biggest thing as a creator, you know, to own your one of the biggest things I should say. So yeah, I think going the indie route is so important for that. And with the worker co-op model, yeah, if you can do things on your own, of course, that's very empowering. But if you need support, if you want to share the workload, that's a great way you could do it. You can start off as a small side hustle while you do your main job. You know, like you could form that with your team, create it, develop it, do some freelance work together, as you know, Chris was mentioning. And then just develop it until it becomes something that you can just quit your day job for and just, you know, make it more something that can financially sustain you all full time.
Yeah.
So if that's of interest to you, I don't know, I could put this in the chat or I could email this later, or yeah, whatever works for you, Sarah, but
Yeah, either one.
resources. Okay, so I'll put in.
Happy to attach it to this after the fact as well, as this will
Okay,
be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube.
yes, great, thank you. So real quickly, the Sustainable Economics Law Center, or SELC, great resources. They have amazing YouTube channel if you want to just learn more about that. Also, the LA Worker Co-op Lab, they offer office hours if you're interested in forming one, and they can talk you through it. They're based in LA, but anyone in the world who's interested can take their office hours and get more support for that. So I'll do that now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Leslie. What a great resource. A bunch of resources to have. Awesome. Well, I know we have 15 minutes left, but there are still a couple of things that I wanted to touch on real quick. One thing I just wanted to circle back to was something, Chris, that you had said about recognizing and prioritizing your own value and time, right? Because with indie animation, as we've discussed, it's hard, right? It's hard to balance that, especially if you do have, say, a day job, or you do work in the studio and you want to work on your own personal thing. And Chris, can you talk a little bit more about you know, how these folks in our panel here as guests can kind of take advantage of the time that they have outside of work?
Yeah, totally. And I noticed along these lines that there have been a number of questions that I feel like I can also answer with this as well about
Yeah,
like,
let's do it.
do you recommend promotion through social media? How do you recommend finding openings to join any production? And this other one from Elizabeth Cartledge. for any independent project you're working on, have you ever thought, what if my project falls through? What's the next step? How do you keep motivation going? So I will say, I think that, yeah, really value your time super highly, especially, I mean, whether you're a freelancer or in a full-time job, like if I if I'm ever not booked and I have time to work on my own stuff, like there's no greater feeling to me. It's like one of those the pyramid of like needs. Like it's like I need to get my creative, fulfillment out there and just like making my own stuff. There's lots of other kinds of creative fulfillment that you get from jobs, like creative problem solving and all this other stuff. But like if you want to make your own stuff and show off like your own sort of like, your own soul that you want to put into your own work and stuff, you just need to spend time making your own stuff on the side. And so I really value that. And that has helped me in freelancing too, because it's like I've been raising my day rate slowly over time as I'm like, well, I want to get booked less because I want to work more on my own stuff. And it's worked really well in that way. I think though, the biggest advice that I always give people in terms of like getting booked and kind of, like getting their name out there and stuff like that is literally just make stuff and post it. And if you're going to spend the time to make a thing that you're going to post it everywhere. Post it on LinkedIn, Instagram, like everywhere, because it takes 5 minutes to post it on, LinkedIn or Reddit or Instagram or whatever. And you never know what's going to come out of that and who's going to see it and whatever. But also another big thing I'll say is like, I think that there's a lot of people who get out of school and they just finish doing a big short and whatever, and they're like, okay, I'm gonna start working on a big new short that I'm gonna use to like pitch a show or something like that. And I think it's a really good practice in general not to just go for like the most ambitious thing possible right off the bat. A thing I would really recommend is, and a thing that I try to, employ myself and like something that I want to try when I want to get into like game development later, like maybe at the end of the year or something. And my plan is basically I'll start messing with that and I'll spend every single day of like a month, I'll just like do a new like little game, like project or something, like a new idea every day that I'll like explore a little bit of and make a super micro thing. You can do the same with animation, like make a little animation every day for a month or something, and just give yourself the month off to just do that. And I promise you, if you do that, by the end of that month, you will have made multiple things that will both be things that you're more excited about and happier with, and like pieces that will be even better for your portfolio than if you just spent that whole month trying to make one thing. And you can build up momentum with that. You can build up momentum to next month. You say, okay, I'm going to do 3-day projects, like 3 days out of every week for the month or whatever. And then you slowly build up more momentum, and you also are building up that muscle of like, it's hard with an ambitious project where you get to a point and you're like, I'm kind of burning out on this a little bit, but I just have to suffer through the end of it and trust my former self when I started this, that the idea is still good. And that is what you should do. But it's really hard to do that if you just dive into that without building up that momentum first. So anyway, those are all the kind of ideas that I would throw out for people, and just doing lots of little projects, posting about them, reminding people you exist. That's how I find everybody that I end up hiring for projects. It's just they're posting really cool work and it gets me excited, and it makes me excited to like pitch that as a style that we could, explore and hire that person for on a commercial project or whatever. So yeah, anyway, that's my, all my thoughts on kind of that stuff.
I love that. There's so much that you can just get out of, putting yourself out there. It doesn't hurt to put yourself out there in any way, especially when it's something that you feel really passionate about, in creating and
And
your
and
own
it
story.
and it really helps you stand out to have that personal work versus just
Yeah,
showing like, oh, here's all the commercial things that I've worked on. Like I'll always want to hire people who like really have their own voices and are putting their own personal work. Again, I know it's
that.
really hard to find that time, but it's so rewarding and worth it. And
Mhm.
it's important to just finish stuff, I think. Like a lot of people, they'll get stuck on, again, that ambitious project and never finish it. So start with smaller things that you can bite off and then, kind of scale up from there.
Yeah. Maddie, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I feel like you know, honestly, in a big way, being a creator, and, you know, whether you're an independent creator, no matter like where you're getting your funding, who you're working for, one of the hardest things really is like believing in yourself. I think artists are sensitive people, creative types are sensitive people. Even though I feel like I have like found like relative success, I still doubt myself all the time. I still doubt projects that I'm working on all of the time. And I just remember, you know, being in school and finishing my thesis film and my professors being like, we all know you want to quit. We all know that you guys hate your films and you think that they suck and you don't want to do this anymore. But like you have to finish it. Like you have to see it through, because, you know, these films are going to be your calling card when you graduate. And that's kind of how I think about, you know, finishing like a really big project that feels like kind of like a slog, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you get to a certain point and you're just looking at it, you're completely disgusted by it. And I think about John Singer Sargent used to like, he would, you can see in his studio space where he would like walk back and forth to look far away from his project and up close to his project and then go outside, and you can see these like pathways sort of like in like the wood of this like studio space if you go and visit it. And it's like you need to like take a step back, you need to go outside, because if, you know, I know animators, there's like the animator personality type. We're locked in our garage, we're locked in the basement, we're locked in a dark room, hunched over a Cintiq, working on our passionate project that we love so much, but we hate so much at the same time. It's like you like really have to go outside, and valuing yourself as a human being and valuing your life and your friendships outside of indie animation. Like indie animation is hard. It's so real. Like when I first got a job at Vice, I was sitting here, I was looking around, I was like, okay, everyone just taking the morning off. Everyone was just like looking at Reddit and drinking coffee for like 4 hours at the beginning of the day. No shade to Vice, but like that's like what it is to like work at an office job. Like a lot of the time, indie animation is just like go, 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 and it's like you need to take care of yourself. Like that's like the biggest thing that I would say that's like key to like indie animation. If I want people to like walk away with anything, it's like believe in yourself, positively affirm yourself, take care of your body, exercise. Like you're like a human being before you're a machine. And at least for me, you know, making all of these films on like relatively low budget, I feel like I'm thinking about myself as a machine, but that's what capitalism does to us, you know, and that's not what we are. So that's what I would say.
Exactly. Well, I know we have just 7 minutes left. I do want to go to actually, as we, Maddie, as you mentioned, you know, closing thoughts, things that you really want our guests to, you know, walk away with. Pearl, I wonder if there's anything there that, or what is it that you want our folks to walk away with here?
Yeah, I think on the topic of taking care of yourself, and I'm speaking to specifically like BIPOC creators as well, that for me, I have tried to center being a creative and playing the long game and keeping that in mind while I go through my journey as an artist, because I think it's really easy to get kind of like this like paralysis with wanting to create things and thinking about the scope of how big it could be and how much energy it might take, and then you don't start at all. I think I saw a comment that's like, oh, and then you don't even want to start it at all. And to think about, you know, we see on social media, you know, a lot of people's successes, right? Highlight reels and all that kind of stuff, but you don't know that project probably took 5 years, maybe it took 10 years, right? And we're just seeing the results, and sometimes it makes us feel like we gotta, you know, urgently participate and urgently create things and urgently put it out, which again, is what capitalism wants of
Yeah,
us. We
hustle
just,
culture.
we're not. Yeah. So I think, you know, thinking about being a creative and longevity about like being a creative, to keep that in mind is really important. And to live life, because you can't create art without living life, like, or else you're just gonna be making up stuff, and that's what we do for a living. But like there's a certain point where it's like we want some authenticity in our work, and that can only come from our lived experiences. And to have lived experiences, you gotta live life, which means taking care of your body, taking care of your mental health, making friends, you know, exploring and, you know, expanding your toolbox of what you can pull from to create stories. So
Yeah,
yeah.
being more than just a drawing slave or a cog in the machine, right?
Right. Yeah, you are a person.
Chris, Leslie, anything additional to add there?
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing thoughts I'm hearing already. And just to add to just, yeah, dedicating time to your own projects, reiterating what I mentioned earlier, just, you know, don't be discouraged if you couldn't get internships at your, at a studio, one of the few major studios a lot of folks want to, that like to seek out, again, support your local film festivals, support smaller studios. They may need that support. And chances are, I mean, just speaking from experience, when a job opens and they know you're a hard worker as a volunteer, chances are you'd be the first person they consider for any job opening. So, but again, making sure that volunteer time is meaningful to you, that you're learning, and it's not something that's a toxic situation. And just from a resource standpoint, I'll put in the chat as well, Legends Animated email list, our link tree where you can join our email list, because we're going to provide volunteer opportunities as we continue to work on productions and with our partners. We also will offer job opportunities of paid work as well. So you're welcome to join that list and check in on what we're up to. And I'll also put in the chat our C4 Hollywood membership page. You're definitely welcome to consider joining our membership. There's a lot of resources that C4 Hollywood offers, both for if you're into independent animation, major studio work, or both. So yeah, feel free to check that out as well. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great resources, Leslie.
I'll just say real quick, value yourself and take care of yourself, as people were saying, which includes make space for yourself to make work just for yourself. And also, if you're new to the industry and you're working at a big studio or whatever, leave work on time, and like you're not an imposter. Like they're paying you for a reason. Yeah, like don't let yourself get too anxious about it. And don't let yourself also get into a situation where you're staying way too late when you really shouldn't be. Yeah, just take care of yourself on all fronts and really value yourself and your time.
I love that. I love that as an overall theme, and also just believe in yourself, right? Indie has such an amazing power right now. I mean, Maddie, I think you said this before on our call, but like everything that is mainstream right now that's cool and fun and awesome was indie, right? So this is how, those amazing IPs start. And again, to our point before, like own your own ideas, believe in your own ideas, own your own IP. That is so powerful to have in this climate and in general. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I know we had some questions left over in the chat, but I hope maybe you guys, if you are open to sharing your socials, if folks can comment or DM you there for any specific
Absolutely.
questions, we would love that.
Anytime.
Yes. Please
All
feel free.
right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. Hope you can tune into the rest of our sessions during Global Talent and Education Day at the BRIC Summit. Thanks so much, all.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Yay,
everyone.
thank you.
Bye, everyone.